I'll talk about the 5 things that you can fix on your profile. Right. So the first thing is your profile image. It's very important. It needs to be a headshot. Nothing below your shoulders is required here because then the visibility is really bad. The second thing about this is you need to have a solid background, just like this one over here. And you also can add some shadow over here. So there's a separation between the background and the foreground. If you can't add that separation, still just add a headshot, a clean headshot, and a solid background. This anyone can do, I hope. None of your body images, none of those like mountains in the background, none of those pictures taken from afar, right? It's a headshot. This place is for your face and it should be recognizable. You will notice a structure here. Can you see this empty space that we have over here? This is by design. You have to keep this gap over here because when you see this cover banner on your mobile, you will see that this gap does not exist on mobile version. So we keep this gap over here so that it's clearly visible and easily readable on the mobile as well. All right, so let's talk about the structure. The easiest part of this is this left top corner should be used for your call to action. I want them to come to my featured section and either book a discovery call with me or book a strategy call. This is a paid call. This is a free 15 minutes call, right? So I want them to come to the featured section. So that's why I use this as a CTO over here. The action I want people to perform on my profile is this. And you can't have multiple call to actions, right? That just dilutes your message. So this left top part is for this. Keep it to like 5-7 words so that's easily readable as well and it doesn't take too much space as well. Over here, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to first call out my ICP in the first line. You can use a maximum of 3 lines in the cover banner, otherwise the visibility will not be good enough. So you start by again calling out your ICP or your target audience. I just added one more qualifier. I said if your average contract value is above $15,000, then you are more specific and more relevant for my service. This is my offer. This is the simplest and the shortest version of my offer that I add this much revenue in this much time. And this is what a lot of people who actually offer some kind of services, this is what they don't do. They would instead say something like, I help you grow on LinkedIn. I help you become an influencer on LinkedIn. I help you build a personal brand on LinkedIn. But I don't really understand what that means. It's a very generic and a surface level kind of promise. The more specific you become in terms of what is the value that you get, and I gave that value in terms of money and revenue, and also in a specific timeline. So everyone who actually wants to sell a service, one tip is to sell a productized service. The second is your offer, the service offering should be very, very specific and tangible. And the question that comes up is some people say my service cannot be this specific. It's kind of different. I'm a strategy consultant, for example. No matter what service you're offering, you can actually give a tangible offer, right? It can be bound in terms of either revenue. I could have said I add 10,000 followers in 60 days. I can make it specific. You just have to think about it. It's always possible no matter what service you have. And I use this lower portion just to say how I deliver it, but you can also use this section as a social proof section. So for example, I'm now one of the fastest growing influencers in Pakistan. According to Favicon, it's a tool. So I could have used this as a way to convince them that I know what I'm talking about. And I've done the same for myself, so I could do the same. Or I could have said I grew from 8,000 to 26,000 followers in 5 months. I could use that as well. This first line is the most important part. And a lot of you just waste this space for your title or for writing some generic, completely irrelevant things. So you want to make sure that at least the first 7 to 8 words over here, they represent what you offer in the most concise way possible. If I break it down, what I'm doing is I am clearly calling out my target audience here. This is my target audience. So I say I help this target audience or my ideal customer profile is I want to talk to small B2B service companies, and I'm specifically also talking to CEOs of those companies for different reasons. But essentially, I mention my ICP or the target audience, and then I say, what do I offer them? A lot of people get this wrong as well. They write a lot of generic stuff like empowering leaders or building teams or stuff like this that's way too broad to actually communicate exactly what you do. Just don't write generic broad stuff that doesn't tell the other person what they can get from you. If these two things are mentioned, who is your target audience and how specifically you help them. This should be done in the first part, then add a separator like this, and then tell them how. Exactly how. I use a combination of content and signals based outreach system. Essentially, the first two parts of your headlines are for this. If now you still want to mention your title because you want to, then at the end you can mention that as well. But don't waste these first 4 or 5 words to add your title or the name of your company. So number one, the profile image. Number two is the headline, and you add your ICP and your offer over here in the most concise way possible. And in the second part of it, you tell them exactly how you do it. Either you tell them how you do it with, for example, with this kind of content and this kind of outreach system, or you can also say without a common pain point. Anything that you can remove, a pain that you can remove, a problem that you can solve, you can also mention that. But the first part needs to have the target audience and the most concise form of your offer. The other two important bits are your about section and this featured section. So for the about section, the common mistakes people make here in the about section is first, the most cringiest part of this is they would write in third person. So you can easily speak in the first person, and also this about section is not really about you. It's also because this is a landing page, remember, this is also about your audience. You will see a certain pattern I'm using here, and the pattern is this. I call out again my ICP, that this is where your customers are and this is the problem, that you, if you're not creating content, you're invisible to them. Then I mention a few problems that my customers keep telling me about. I have now mentioned the problems again about my audience, right? I haven't even mentioned a single thing about myself. Again, then I validate their problems. Then I give them a solution. I tell them that these problems are not valid. Then I reverse the problems that I mentioned over here essentially, and I give them options to solve that problem. I specifically tell them what do they get when they work with me. I also give pricing over here, which a lot of people are hesitant about. The about section is not about you, it's about your audience. It's a good place to actually talk about your service in a very specific way. The more tangible, the better. For the featured section, you should have 2 or 3 links over here. Ideally, if you have a discovery call that's the main thing that you want people to do when they actually come to your profile, you can do this. If you want someone to visit your website, then add that link over here as well. If you want someone to read your newsletter, you can add that link over here. But the rule of thumb over here for this featured section is you should not add more than 3. So my suggestion is to stick to 2, because the visibility is really good. So essentially your primary call to action, the main thing that you want, and the secondary call to action. Maybe less people will directly go for a paid call with me, but more people will go for a 15 minutes discovery call to see if I can help them and I can work with them. Just adding that link, adding the name of that service or whatever that event is in a very, very clean, simple way. And that's it. That's all about the profile.